Yo there guys and girls, this is Landro for LandroeGaming, bringing you a short video in anticipation for Mists of Pandaria. As anybody who's playing Warcraft at the moment will know, the latest patch has just gone live, 5.0.4, and this video that I'm doing here will kind of hopefully give some fellow priests out there a little bit of advice to carry them from the current point through to the launch of Mists, which is about 4 weeks worth of raiding. Now most guilds will still be raiding, especially the sort of semi-casual guilds who are still farming mounts for other raid members, so they'll still want to be clearing the content. And as you are probably aware, disc priests have changed massively, and there's lots of new things to consider now this patch has gone live. Now the first thing is obviously the talents. Now the first tier of talents, there's not really too much to write home about in a PvE perspective. Void tendrils have their uses in some niche fights. I went with Siphene just because I like to drop it every now and then, purely for the animation. It doesn't really have much use, but that's what I went with. The second set of tier talents bring something that disc priests have been crying out for, and that's body and soul for disc priests. Every shield gives the person shielded a 60% speed increase for 4 seconds. Fantastic on fights like Hogara, but it's just fun as well when you're running around. Now Angelic Feather is also a very good spell. I use this in my holy spec. You place a feather and the next person to sort of run over this feather gets a speed increase. That's very handy as well. And Phantasium, the Fade, removing movement in parenthetics, making you untargetable for 3 seconds. That's kind of more orientated for PvP at the moment. There might be some fights in Mists of Pandaria, but at the moment it's not really too relevant. The next tier, a mana returning tier. I'm skimming through these, by the way, because most guides have already covered these. This is just briefly what I've gone with and why I went with them. So from Darkness Comes Light, primarily a holy talent there. It's your free flash heals when you use your sort of hard cast heal spells and smites. Mindbender, which is the one I've gone with, and I'll explain why I went with that in a little bit. And Powered Solace, which I was really looking forward to having in my arsenal of atonement spells, but the nerf from 2% mana return to 0.7 makes it, in the current content, when there isn't so much downtime to hardcast Powered Solace enough to make it better than the Mindbender. I prefer Mindbender. I use it every minute cooldown. I use it at the start of encounters when I'm building my atonement stacks up and my evangelism and whatnot. So I find Mindbender, because it's passive, you hit it and then for that duration it's returning your mana. You get to use it about every sort of 45 seconds by the time its duration has run out as well. Powered Solace has its uses in some fights. Obviously Deathwing, possibly it can be used because there's lots of downtime between platforms, but I went with Mindbender there. The next tier, you've got your Desperate Prayer, which has its uses. Spectral Guise, which has its uses, primarily as a PvP talent again. I've gone for Angelic Bulwark because, being a disc priest, the absorption is there. Kind of, it's what we're about, so I went with that. The next tier, unfortunately, because the current 2 set we have, which buffs our power infusion, as you probably know, we've lost Divine Hymn as a spell now, which is a massive nerf to us. Druids across the board have kept Tranquility. Unfortunately, I lost, or disc priests have lost Divine Hymn. So the only use we'd get off 2 set is after a power infusion. So we're kind of forced to take power infusion with our 2 set at the moment, which is a bit of a bummer because I want to take Divine Insight, which is Pennant, making your next power shield ignore Weaken Soul and not cause the Weaken Soul effect, which is fantastic. Twist of Fate might have its uses in some of the latter content. I would have used this personally on Ultraxion during progress because the Ultraxion kill phase was just manic, so that would have been fantastic for that part of the fight. But as I mentioned, I've taken Power Infusion. It's still a nice spell to have. You can dot it across your raid just like previously did, or you can use it yourself. The mana restraints, which I'm going to talk about in a little moment, mean you've basically got to use it on yourself. At present, that might change as we gear throughout Mists of Pandaria. Now, going on to my glyphs, unfortunately, priests have really been screwed over on the glyph front. The major glyphs that we take are pretty much obligatory at the moment. You've got your Prayer of Mending glyph, which is the big boost to the first bounce of Prayer of Mending. Instant Holy Fire, now that's fantastic, and you increase damage off Smite. Now, I've taken those 2 at the moment. But as I'm going to say, you don't Holy Fire and Smite at the moment like you did previous to this patch. You won't be spamming those spells because your mana returns do not allow this, so you have to be much more careful with your atonement. so much more careful with your smiting and your holy firing. So there are some other variants which could become useful. Now, it's worth mentioning the penance movement one is going to be good. The mana increase at the moment makes it a little bit less attractive, but it could become a good glyph in the future. Casting penance whilst moving is fantastic. The powered shield one, again, the fact that now it's not a bonus heal, it actually takes the absorb away of 20% and turns that into a healing, makes this glyph a little bit less attractive again. And the next thing would be the renew. Now renew, gone is the mantra where renew is not a disc priest spell. It's back, it's powerful, and this glyph could be used in certain situations where there's lots of movement and you wouldn't necessarily have the chance to hard cast. Renew in my holy spec is fantastic. I was using it on Hagara through Hagara Heroic just this week's raiding, and it's brilliant. It really is back to being a most used spell in that spec. Now, the last thing, which I'm going to talk about, which has changed, we talked through the talents and we talked through the glyphs pretty briefly. Now, the thing that I needed to do is, if you look at my gloves, full spirit gems. Now, the healing throughput of our spells at present are such that we don't necessarily need to stack intellect like we did. First and foremost, our rapture has changed. Our rapture has changed massively. No longer does it give you a return based on your mana pool. Now it gives you a return based on your spirit, and it's 150% of your spirit returned via rapture. So that obviously means spirit is much more attractive in that sense. With the new mana pools, as you can see, we have 100k hard set mana pool. The meta gem obviously increases that by 2%, hence that I've got 102,000 at the moment. But basically, the fact that our spells are so powerful, even without all the intellect, as you can see, we now get like, well, that's obviously a proc off of my forset. It would be a 50k shield, and the actual pure healing throughput we have, as you can see, 120k crits on great heals, 60k non-crits, penances hitting for sort of 80,000. We literally do not need the intellect for our healing throughput anymore. We don't get the regen out of the intellect, thus we need to start thinking more about spirit. And as you can see, I've changed all blue sockets or generic sockets to pure spirit, and I've gone for the mixed intellect spirit gems, reforged everything back into spirit, got the heroic spine trinket, which obviously stacks up to 10 times, 990 spirit, meaning that you end up with around, or I end up with around about 4-8 spirit. I also have spirit food, and I also have spirit pot, so I end up with round about 5k spirit. Now this is essential because you will if you don't do this. Having 1,500 spirit like we did prior to this patch is no longer feasible. Rapture returns, returns to rapture, combined with the lack of actual raw regen we get from having no spirit, means we have to take spirit. And now I've done 8 of 8 heroic, or the guild did yesterday, and found that gemming and reforging to spirit, or reforging back into spirit, of course most disc priests would have reforged out of that because it wasn't essential stat for us. As you can see, PowerTorrent is gone, Heartsong is back, dark glow embroidery now on the back rather than the intellect back. All these things combined enabled me to basically be absolutely fine through my heroic Dragon Soul. So if you guys are struggling for mana, then it might be worth doing what I've done. I found Dragon Soul to be just the same as it was before in terms of mana by going back to my spirit, obviously using Mindbender on cooldown. As I mentioned, you don't Holy Fire and Smite spam now. You will literally Holy Fire, as I said, I use it with Mindbender at the start of pools. I will Holy Fire and Smite to build my evangelism up and consume for Archangel in periods where the healing is higher. Archangel has a slight buff, it's now 25%. It's also had a slight nerf, it doesn't return any mana. I would have liked to have found a middle ground there. Maybe 20% healing, 5% mana back would have been good, because you could then justify spamming Holy Fire, Smite using on cooldown. It would have been good in that sense, because we'd have got quite a bit of mana back via the 5%, almost as much as to justify the restacking of it. And we don't have that now, so we have to think much more wisely of when we consume our Archangel. Other than that, most stuff has stayed the same. There's interesting changes across the board for all classes. I play my Holy Paladin, as usual with Holy Paladin. They're in heaven. It's fantastic talents they've got. But with regards to Disc Priest, I found those changes, those talents are working for Dragon Soul. Now this will change when Mists of Pandaria comes out, and that's good. There will be, as Blizzard keeps saying, lots of changes within content, so we'll be re-glyphing and re-talenting between bosses, and this is exciting. This will bring a new element to the game. So as you can see, my guild are calling me, so I best go and speak to those guys. So that was just a brief video here. Thanks very much for watching. Landro out.